So I would just encourage whoever's watching not to believe anything that I'm saying, and to look into your own experience and find out for yourself. Because what I'm pointing to can always be confirmed by you in your own experience. Alright. So I wanted to talk about or clear up a common misconception regarding this whole non-dual awakening thing, and that's that thought should be resisted. That thought is something inherently bad, or duality is something that is separate from this that is inherently bad and should be avoided. I think someone made a comment in the comments. It went something like, the person said, talking about non-duality is duality, or thinking is duality, or something like that. And this is a common, very common misconception about non-duality. And this is a mind-based understanding. So I'll tell you my experience. So I don't experience duality at all. So to me, duality doesn't exist. It's not a thing. You could say there's only non-duality, but equally I'm not experiencing some objective reality called non-duality. I don't experience separation. So there's no me that can stand back from experience, separate from it, and take a position to relate to the experience and decipher it as either duality or non-duality. There's only the experience, with no separation or no position. No position that can resist something called thought, that can resist something called duality. So there's no need to resist or cling on to any position, any part of experience. So thought, the very fabric of thought is non-dual in nature. The very fabric of these sounds I'm making, this language, is non-dual in nature. So there's no such thing as duality. So what suggests that is a thought, belief. What suggests that is a position that relates to something separate from it. A position that views thoughts as something separate from it, a thought object. To me, that position doesn't exist. There's either no position or all positions simultaneously. So there's not two things, one thing called duality and one thing called non-duality. There's no position that can decipher that. There's no subjective position that can decipher that objectively, other than a belief thought. Do you see it? So this is one of the big misconceptions. There is something called duality. There's something called an identified entity, or there's something called thought that has to be resisted, that has to be avoided. So the freedom in this is that we don't have to resist or avoid any part of experience, including thought, including suffering, paradoxically. When suffering's not happening, or labelled or judged from a position, when suffering's not happening to a character central in this experience, to a position, to a me, a self, it's not suffering. It's not suffering anymore. Because that position isn't there. The position that experiences that from a position isn't there. The resistance to this appearance as it appears isn't there. So the appearance is free to appear in whatever way it does, and it's perfect, and its essence is peace, its essence is love, and it doesn't need to be avoided or resisted. That's the freedom in this. The appearance can appear as the thought, the appearance can appear as pain, it can appear as words, sounds, language, and none of it matters. None of it matters. It doesn't matter to anyone. There's no one here to separate up experience and then have a thought or a belief that this is not correct, or this is suffering, or this is identification. It's too immersed. It's not like that. It's too immersed. It's too immediate. There's not that space and time that even allows it. The thing is, so I'm not a person who's trying to, that holds a position that's insisting whoever's watching this video adheres to my position, or that's arguing with your position, or it's a loud car, that's insisting that you adopt my position or you understand my position. It's not like that. I know it's hard to understand, but it's not like that. I'm not saying something that I believe as a person is objectively true, and I want you to also believe that truth. It's not like that. I know it seems weird, but it's not like that. This, from a position, from a thought belief, will look like this person, David, has a position. It will look like the same thing. So this person, David, has a position that he's trying to get across to a separate position in time. But that's not what's happening. That's not what I'm pointing to. And to let this message sink in, there has to be a relaxing of the holding of these positions. Anyone who I've talked to at length, directly, or anyone who has been watching this channel for a while, or this recognition has clarified, let's say, will know what I'm talking about when I say the resonance with this is not about the language. It's quite paradoxical, and this won't be heard by a position of me, but it's not about the language. There's a, again, this is just a model. There's a let's say different level, bad way to put it maybe, of knowing, a different level of understanding that entirely transcends the conceptual knowledge or the thought, that isn't dependent on the conceptual knowledge or thought at all. And it seems quite, very intangible to the mind. The mind will hold on to these positions, or this or thought or belief. I'm giving it I'm almost giving it an identity here, but it's not like that. It's always one thought that appears now, informing another thought that appears now, and so on, creating the illusion of time, creating the illusion of some entity here separate from this objective world, internal world of thought. What was I talking about again? It's gone. Yeah, it's a felt understanding. It's a felt understanding. This clarifies at a level that isn't dependent on the objective world of the mind, that isn't dependent on belief, that isn't dependent on ideas or concepts. It really seems like these are needed. It really seems like the me wants to understand the way it is, and that's the only way it can solve the problem of selfing, by understanding the way it is. But it's almost the opposite of that. We just have to let go of all positions so that this appearance is free to appear as anything, is free to adopt any position or no position. And there's a feeling of this holding, has a feeling to it, has an energetic quality to it that feels tense, that feels defensive, that feels like it needs to make effort to confirm its own position over and over again by thinking. I need to confirm this position because deeply I don't feel that it's true, by thinking and looking for confirmation that confirms the existence of me in time as something separate from this experience. So another comment was, someone said something like, or someone pointed out that I said in one of the other videos that this happens and then it stabilizes or something, and then there's a permanent awakening. I'm not sure if I said that. Doesn't sound like something I would say, but then again, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying half the time, so if I did say that, then apologise. I didn't mean to say that. Generally I wouldn't say describe something in that way. This is always something that happens now. It doesn't exist in time. This awakening doesn't happen in time. It's always right now. There's a pullback to this position that relates to a timeline, and that's what we call the self, the selfing. That a belief, a thought appears saying, I'm here, this is me, and I relate to this world in time, and I am this, that, this is my experience. It colours experience with its view, and its view might feel like this isn't right, I'm not awake, or this is the wrong experience, or I am this, or I am that. I have not had an awakening. That's just a story, and that story always appears as one thought right now. And what gives it it's hard to say what gives it the illusion, that position of self, its reality. Because as I've said, thought isn't the problem. It's the thinker that's the problem. The thinker happens to be a thought. But there's something different about the quality of this thought. There's something that seems to build in the illusion of time that gives it its suggested reality, and I can't tell you what that is. But to break that spell, so to speak, we see that repeatedly as one thought that appears now. And every time that's noticed and it dissolves, and then we're left with this, it loses a bit of its power. And that can happen in one insight, one realization, one recognition, or the recognition can happen in the relative timeline as a series, let's say, of noticings, and a clarity that creeps up on you. Because when this recognition clarifies, like I keep saying, it's not something you can take a position on as the thinker to relate to it and then confirm it as awakening. It doesn't work like that. It creeps up on you. You don't notice it. And the mind will say ridiculous things like, I'm not awake, and because of this thought or this action or what I said to this person, that means I'm not awake, and then my awakening's gone. But it's just all nonsense. It's all one nonsense thought that appears in the moment right now. And that's all there is to it. Just keep seeing that. Just keep seeing that, and the spell will be broken at one point. Another point I wanted to make is that this is always about liberation from psychological suffering, liberation from the uncomfortable illusion of me. It's always about peace. Some people call it love. Transcendent okayness. This awakening thing is always about that. I think some people can get confused and maybe hear about some of the stories of the dark night stuff, or the moving through this energetic change and how uncomfortable that can be at times, and use that to confirm an identity, use that as an excuse to blame the pain that they're feeling, the pain that's appearing, as on something else, something other than me, something other than this. If so to put this into perspective, after this recognition clarified initially, after the first big shift, there was a massive reduction in psychological suffering, and that the peace has just continued to deepen, continued to become more profound immediately in experience. The story of me, the story of the individual, the one who has problems, has continually diminished since that first recognition. There was a period where the intensity of feeling and the insight that there was no control in this, and there was no autonomy in the thinker that thinks thoughts, the pattern would continue. That, in a sense, was more, I guess you could say, that was more intense, more uncomfortable. But I wouldn't say that the suffering became more pronounced compared to prior to this recognition, when there was a lot of belief and a lot of clinging to identity. So if this is something that is causing you for suffering in the long term, I would suggest that I would just point out that it's possible to incorporate this awakening thing, the non-dual thing, as an ideology, as a belief, into identity. And the mind's very sneaky that way. But this is all about peace. This is all about liberation from suffering, not dependent or having to be qualified or not exclusive of anything. Not exclusive of anything. A peace, a freedom, not exclusive of anything in experience whatsoever. So it doesn't require resistance. It doesn't require you to suffer more in the long term. All that's required is to move attention into this immediate experience and inquire into what is a thought and what is not. More so, what is a thought, because what is not is self-confirming, is inherently obvious. It doesn't need anything, it doesn't need deciphering or confirmation. Anyway, I need to go now, and I'll talk to you next time.